Mike, we're back. Communication
back.
Essentials podcast. We joke about this every time that we just kind of do one when we feel like it. But quite honestly, you and I have felt like doing this one for a long time. This is the generational workplace wellness podcast. In other words, a bunch of people representing all of the generations in the workplace, talking about what's going on, where the common thread is. And quite honestly, we're giving them the soapbox to get up and talk about their own generation and shake their fists at what's going on with the other generations.
That's right, Ben. Yeah, as a Gen Xer, I think we've been planning this so long that I was a millennial age when we first talked about it and crossed over. So we've seen a lot of change since we started talking about it, but it's better to have other people talk to us and let us know what they have to say. And to let us know, see if Gen X is really the best of all generations.
Yeah, I think we'll find out. We will.
It's not a competition, but
no,
because there is no competition.
It is. So we were joined last time with our producer, the IKEA communications intern, Macy Rosen. She is here again, and she is here to not only be the producer and keep us on track, but she's a guest representing Gen Z. So let's say hi real quick to Macy. Macy, how's it going?
I'm good, Ben. I'm ready to represent Gen Z and do it well. So I'm here again. I'm super excited about this podcast and our guests. So I will just be fighting for Gen Z since everybody just wants to come at us.
Oh my gosh.
Typical Gen Z, always the victim.
Well, and joking aside for a quick second, we do owe Macy a lot of credit for this topic because she did some research on the different generations and said the one thread that most generations can agree on in the workplace is on the importance of wellness. And when she started digging on that, we realized wellness is interpreted differently by every generation. So we are a communications industry. We are an agency in a communications industry. We should tell people the importance of trying to understand who is working for you and what wellness is to them before you just start rolling out programs that maybe people care about. So that was a great nod to Macy there. And you and I, normally you kick us off with the random thought. You're going to have random thoughts all throughout this. We're going to skip right past this, and we are going to meet our guests right now because they're going to be doing most of the talking. I'm excited to have them. We'll go ahead. We already met our Gen Z representative is Macy. We'll go in order here. So our John, who are you? What do you do? Did we decide what generation you're repping today? Go ahead. Tell us which one.
I'll be whatever you want me to be, Ben. So I'm in, what would be called the Xennials. I'm kind of in between the Gen X and the millennials. So I was born in 79, which is in that 78 to 83. But right now I am a benefits consultant. So I deal in all things medical benefits and certainly spend a ton of time in the wellness space. So my former life was I spent about 20 years as an HR practitioner. So mostly managing HR programs and departments for large organizations. So I've kind of seen it at the employer level, and then now I deal with it at even more of a macro level. And then obviously for my own personal self and managing my own wellness.
Yeah, and you and John, as we were prepping for this, your insights into kind of representing that wellness and what companies really have to be focused on was so valuable. So I'm looking forward to you sharing your perspective of that from your career position, but also from your generational position. So we're glad to have you. Gen X, besides me and Mike, and I am representing the hoodie and the Guns N' Roses t-shirt, so I just look the part today. Our Gen X representative, I know, Lisa, welcome. What's going on?
Thank you. So yes, like John, I am on the cusp between millennials and Gen X, but I am married to a very Gen X older guy. So I definitely feel like I identify more on the Gen X side, but I'm technically on the cusp. In my personal life or professional life, I have been in public relations for about 15 years. And my career was a little bit broken up because I was a stay-at-home mom for about 5 of those, 5 out of the last 20 years. But I do public relations now for Humana. And I met Ben when I was in my former career with the federal government, when I worked for the U.S. Army Recruiting Command. I met him. He was an amazing speaker and telling us all about what matters to each generation, which is super helpful when you're talking about recruiting for careers and such. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yes, and you and I think I felt it was one of those nights where I got back and we were at an event, and I was like, you were supposed to walk me around, we were supposed to meet those people, and I basically took all your time. You and I I think we acted like we had known each other for years. We had so many things in common. It was great, and here we are, 5-6 years later down the road. Very grateful to be able to still be connected. So I'm glad to have you on here. Last but not least, somebody very, very special to Akia, to me personally. She's been on the show before, and she and I have debated many, many things, some of which we'll talk about today as we've ran Akia together for so many years. Jan Gusick, founder of Akia Communications back in 1996. Jan, welcome. What generation are you repping? You look like you could be repping Gen Z. You look great.
Thank you, Ben. So yeah, you saved the best for last. I'll say that, and also the oldest. So I'm a boomer, and I've literally been listening to you all talk, and I think I graduated high school before all of you were born. So that puts me squarely in the boomer category, but also probably the wisest and most experienced and smartest person on the panel. So I look forward to
Shots fired.
I look forward to making
party foul.
Jan, you and I have known each other. I met you in 2000. So you've known me truly as a Gen X, as as I was kind of emerging out of the 90s and into today. So you have been not to get off track, but you're extremely formative in my career and helping me understand, like, it's not just your perspective, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you're here today talking with us about this, because not only did I think we learned a lot from you, but you were never opposed to listening to the snotty college kid that just came in and was trying to tell you things that were in class. You were always open to that. So I've always remembered that, and trying to be like, you don't ever think you know everything, and everybody can be contributing at any level. So I think we're very excited and open to your contributions to this conversation today. So let's get started. So we have 3 questions we're going to get into, and the kind of format is we want to spend a little bit of time on each and round robin this and let everybody go. If you're listening and you hear and things sound like they might get a little heightened or tense, don't worry. We've talked before this. We're all friends. It's kind of the shtick we're going to be flowing with today. But we will take moments and kind of give you real insights as we go. So we're just really want to have fun and shed light on these things. So the first question, and we are going to start with Jan. So we went with our intros and ended with Jan. We're going to kind of work back and start with Jan on this one. The point of the podcast today, what we're talking about, is wellness in terms of what it means to the different generations that are active in the workplace. Because if you've been following this, never before has there been this many generations at once in the workplace, which should be seen as an opportunity. And I think a lot of organizations do see it that way, but does pose challenges communicating programs and creating programs that appeal and have value to the wide range of employees in an organization. So Jan, in your perspective, and answering kind of from that boomer generation, how do you define wellness? What is wellness to you? Yeah. How do you define it?
Well, it's so interesting because wellness, the way I would define it today, is 180 degrees different than what I would have defined it in my working years. And, I ran a company. So it was a very stressful situation. So for me, wellness was getting through the day without really being exhausted at the end of it, or making myself ill from stress. Boomers tended to be the type of people we put our nose to the grindstone. We work hard. We didn't ask for promotions. We didn't ask for recognition. We just felt that if we worked, eventually someone would notice and we'd get rewarded for that. And I'm not, I'm proud of what we accomplished, but also when you live like that on a treadmill, you can make yourself too stressed and leading to very unhealthy practices, and to the point where I literally even had to get medical help just to help manage stress, because it was the rat race. It was managing a company, having teenagers at home or little kids at home. It was managing elderly parents. You're really torn and you were really stressed all the time. So for anybody in the workforce who is experiencing that, I know you can relate. I know Ben often, we talked about how we worked together for years. There were many times where I said, Ben, I think I'm having a heart attack. And I really thought I was, because the stress was just so crazy. So now I'm happy to report that I am semi-retired, which means I have a lot more free time and a lot more time to just live life to its fullest. And to me, that is what wellness is. Being well enough to walk every day, to get out and enjoy life, to love and play with my grandchildren, to do things that fulfill me, my passions personally, as well as professionally. And if I can get out and walk every day and be healthy, to me, that is the complete definition of wellness for a boomer at my age.
Well said. Very well said. So, Lisa, what do you going to you next? What do you think about wellness? Anything in there? I'm sure you can agree with some of that, but what's your perspective on wellness in the workplace?
I actually feel like I identify with so much of what you said, Jan. Definitely when it comes to work, like there was no, like when I started working, I know it's only been like 20 years or so, but there was just no, like, this idea of work-life balance did not exist. And to me,
Right.
the ultimate wellness at this stage of my life is work-life balance, because I have, 2 teenage kids. My husband works part-time. We live near family. Like, I need to have energy and stamina to do all my work stuff, which is a busy job, but also still have energy left to give my family, the people that I brought into this world, this family I created, the best of me too. So when I think of wellness, I really just, it really comes down to work-life balance and having the resources to not feel completely drained at the end of every day, and that I'm giving enough to each person in my life, but also to myself. I don't know that was something that, like, the boomer generation ever thought about, like looking after themselves. That wasn't a thing.
Right.
So to me, that's what defines wellness, is that work-life balance and having time to fill my own cup, so to speak.
Nice.
John, what are your thoughts and
Yeah.
your perspective from the position you're sitting in? You probably like hearing a lot of this.
Love
in terms of what can be offered. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I would love to be totally adversarial, because that's, the setup, right? But I do have to say, I agree with a lot of what has been brought up. I kind of came up, Generation X, when you think about it, is, they pride themselves in the work ethic, right? So it's that, work ethic mantra. So I very much came up in that. I watched my dad just work tirelessly, and I absorbed that. So I did come, into the workforce with that type of a work ethic, and one example of that, I think that's good, is my wife has always said I hate sleep. And because, like, I stay awake longer than she does and I wake up earlier, but it's that mentality of, like, sleep is a waste of time. Like, those are hours that you could be doing things constructive, So getting out of that has taken me a lot of years, for sure. Part of that's my HR, that world that I've lived in for 20 years. So managing the workforce from an HR standpoint, managing all these, like, wellness programs and health programs, and you can't, like, not prescribe. I mean, I guess you can, but you can't, to not prescribe to those programs and then be selling them to your employees is ridiculous. So I've spent years on the HR side with this mentality of wellness that I've kind of developed over the years, and I call it the dimensions of wellness. And it's really trying to get employees to look at things from like buckets. So instead of just looking at wellness as, a preventative medical thing, which is extremely important, it's also, so it's physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual, relational, financial, vocational, advocational. So, like for me personally, I actually go through an exercise in December every year where I kind of like evaluate all of those buckets and how'd I do for the year, and it's the setup of the next year of like goal setting for me in those different buckets, because I do believe that if you don't have balance in those different buckets, something is going to be off. So I've worked with a lot of executives where, to Jan's point, they do exceptional on the workforce side, and then they'll destroy their bodies, or their family life is a disaster, and it's like, what was that for? So and it's something is out of balance and out of whack, and then it forces everything else out of whack. So I think looking at all of those things, pretty consistently, lately, the mental health, bucket, if you will, has been a huge focus, and it should be. But all of these other things, are a huge deal as well. So for me, certainly the physical bucket is the most important, because I truly believe that if you don't have good physical health and good practices as it relates to rest and physical activity and sleep, you're not going to get those other buckets in alignment, and you're not going to have the energy, to Lisa's point, to be able to be your full self in all these different areas of life. So it's definitely evolved for me over time. I think some of that is just getting older. So, so I know, you see the baby face, that I have, but it's also shrouded in a gray beard. So it's like, through as you get older, you start to reflect more on some of those things, which I'm sure some of it is, but I think there's generational pieces as well.
All right, so Macy, Gen Z, you got to follow that. You probably love the dimensions of wellness concept, right? Is that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And I think for me, a very short and sweet way to put it is that for me personally, I think wellness is being able to maintain the mental and physical energy to keep myself healthy. And with that comes what I think my generation's wellness is. I feel like hang in there with me. It's going to sound bad at first, but I think that Gen Z, a good way to put it is we like to work smarter, not harder. And I don't mean that in a let's be lazy way. I just mean that in a let's find the best way to do this, the most concise way to do this while still getting the work done. And so I think that really goes along with like the remote work and also work-life balance. I think that Gen Z is really making that, because obviously a lot of us, most of us don't have like our own family, as you guys are talking about taking care of kids and things like that. We don't have our own families yet, but we are establishing this for ourselves and our friends right now, so we can have it when we have families and when we in our future, when we also need that time a little bit more, if that makes sense. So I think that's what wellness is to me in my generation.
It's fascinating going around the horn here, just of when Jan, you talked about being stressed, and it was like a physical thing, and then we get all the way around the horn to Macy, where it is more, and with John, more aware of, the mental aspect of it. I'm sure with Jan and Gen X, okay, to be sick to miss work meant I have a virus, I'm throwing up. But if my head's not in it, or if I'm mentally not there, it's like, well, snap out of it and get to work. Whereas, all right, tilted more towards John and Macy, it's no, the mental aspect is just as important, and I'm not doing myself any favors by trying to push because that's not healthy, like you said. But older, physical health is what we meant, right? It wasn't up here.
Yeah. That's going to play into the second question here. And Lisa, I'm going to start with you this time. But when we talk about employee wellness, kind of the way we were discussing it coming into this, it was, why is it important? What are some of the best practices? And if those come up, we definitely can hit on those. I think, given the setup that we had to that first question, I'd like to hear from everybody on the panel here, where some of the misperceptions are. Mike shed light on a great one there when it comes to like employee wellness. That is such a big picture view and such a generic term, but it can mean something. I mean, I'm all for it if you're sick, stay home, but at the same time, you will probably never see a message from me on Teams that's like, have a headache, signing off a little early. That doesn't mean I don't value it. It just means I don't work that way. But you will see that from some of our newer employees because like their head's not in it, like Mike said. So Lisa, to you, what are your thoughts on kind of where some of those misperceptions are in the workplace, that it's like, well, we view wellness this way. No, we view wellness that way. Like, why do you think that is? Where are those areas?
Well, I think the reason there's like some friction between the generations is because, it's always, no matter how much mental health we talk about, and look, I have had therapy many times in my adult life to try to, get through this. But at the end of the day, we're very used to these tracks on how we, and how we operate. And it takes a lot of conscious thought to kind of get off those tracks. So I think, I'm with you, Ben. You're never going to see me say, hey, I have a headache. I'm going to, check out for the day. Like I worked from home when I had COVID, but, like, honestly, it wasn't that bad. I didn't have a bad case, so that wasn't the end of the world. But, I think I'm part of the Gen X generation where it's like, there was no concept of self-care and like, like you went to, like, I remember I had pneumonia and I still went to work because I had no time off. Like I literally had no time off, and I worked for the federal government, and it wasn't a situation like you could, like, okay, hey, take a free day or something. That really wasn't an option for that job. And so I think what happens is we sometimes get in these situations where it's like, well, I sucked it up. Why can't you? But I think that's a terrible mentality because, if you're a mentally healthy person, you want better for someone than what you had. And so I absolutely want there to be space for people to say, you know what, like, I am really sick. I'm going home and it's not the end of the world. And, like, you can take it. It's just go home. It's fine. So I want that for everybody in the workplace. But it still just feels weird to me to not power through. It's just a hard track to get off,
Yeah, I feel guilty.
And I think it's go ahead. I think it's important. So it's interesting how you said there might be friction between the different groups, and there's a part of me that really admires the younger people who say, I'm not going to make myself sick for my job, right?
Mhm.
But there's also a part of my group who feels like, but I can sometimes maybe see the pendulum swing a little too far, which is typically the case in everything. There's always extremes, right? And then we somehow end up in the middle. But because I have heard people say, I'm just not happy at work. I'm not fulfilled. And that my first instinct is, look, that's what the money's for. If it was fun, I wouldn't pay you to do it. It's called a job. So I have to kind of try to check some of that at the door. But on the other hand, and John, you mentioned it when you said, I really had to try hard. And I think, Lisa, you mentioned it too. I really had to try hard to get away from some of those things, because the truth is most companies will take what you give them. And so if our generations have worked, listen, I was I owned a business. If somebody wanted to give me 12 hours a day, I let them, So I think the new thinking has to, is being driven by young people, but it has to, new policy has to come from the workforce who gives people permission to say it is okay to take a break, to put yourself first, to put your mental health first, without, of course, going too far the other way. But I love that the younger people are driving this, because I recognize that the way I lived wasn't healthy. But sometimes I go back to, well, it might be healthy, but can you afford to live? Can you afford that apartment if all you're trying to do is, be happy? So there is a medium somewhere, and I love that companies are addressing it and looking for ways to help us find that balance and to give us the permission to do so.
Yeah, John, I'm going to come to you on this because I'm curious, like what you see in the workplace. Jan mentioned that pendulum. There's also, you look at how that aligns with the national news recently that, I think for the first time, we're under an average 34-hour work week. So there is definitely something setting in terms of what Macy's saying, like, let's work smarter, that we really need the traditional 40-hour work week, which is hard for this Gen X guy to think about. I'm fine not in the 8:30 to 5 window. I can work at all times. That I'm fine with. But like, considering a 4-day work week or a 30-hour work week seems so foreign to me, but maybe that's what we need. So John, how do you view this? What would you say based on what you're hearing? Like, is it balanced in terms of how we're helping employees? Like, hey, you're getting close to burning yourself out here, versus, hey, we need some work done here.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this is a really, really tough thing to wrestle with for a business owner, for an organization, and then for individuals working for an organization, because every business is different. I've spent the majority of my career in manufacturing, so all of the workplace flexibility and hybrid arrangements and all that, those things sound wonderful, but in a factory setting, you can't do that. So
Right.
so most of those types of strategies, you have to get super creative to create those types of structures. And I've seen it on both sides. So I've seen employees say they need this flexibility. They want to be able to, work a shorter work week and work shorter days. But in the same regards, if you move over to that side, then you have to be focused on objectives. So it's like, okay, it's not about the hours that you're in the office, it's about meeting those objectives. And then when you start driving to those objectives, then it's like, whoa, now you're pulling the whip, with what you're expecting of me. And it's like, you can't have it both ways. So if you want the work from home arrangement, if you want, shortened work week, if you want to have Friday off, those types of things, then you have to be okay with, these are the expectations of the job. This is, the objective. And then if that person nails the objective, do you really care that they're there on Thursday afternoons after 4 p.m.? Like, it shouldn't matter. But then you still have some, boomers and Gen X, and even into some of the millennials they look at the hours that you're in the office as your work product. So it's this like melding of like all the generations figuring this thing out. If organizations really understood what they're after and what they need, then they could break it down into individual positions better and then give their employees better objectives and then hold them accountable to those objectives. But in most organizations, you're so far away from that, and that takes so much work to get there, that we're just, we're kind of stepping along the way. But to me, it's those two things, like, it has to meet, and a lot of the conversations around, this flexibility and, and that kind of thing is, to me, the conversation's usually off. It's like, well, why can't we have Fridays off in the summer? Well, why can't we have a 35-hour work week? Well, if I'm, a single mother, and my concern is being at home at 2:30 p.m. when my kid gets off the bus, I don't care about Friday off. I care about being home every day at 2:30 to get my kid off the bus. So flexibility means something different to me than to the next person, and then that creates all these other things. But I'll leave you with one more thing around this topic. how are we defining, wellness? When I've had these wellness talks with my employees in the organizations that I've been a part of, you have to understand what's important to all of those individuals, and then you have to come to some sort of agreement on what that looks like. And usually that means listening more than talking. So you have to be able to have some sort of a mechanism within your organization where you're listening to employees, what are their concerns, what's most important to them, and then having that two-way conversation. But also, to go on the other side of this, you have to be willing to, as an employee, listen. Because I'm sure Jan would agree with this. When you're doing something like, let's say, building an organization, you're not going to have balance in those other buckets that are going on in your life. If you want this position that's a director, and you're telling me as the president of the organization, why can't I get this position? And then on the other side of it, you're telling me that you have to be home, at 4 p.m. every day, and I have clients outside the US that have to be that we have to converse with at those times, or there's needs of the business that don't, connect with, these other pieces. You have to be willing, to give in certain areas, and there's going to be times of your life that are out of balance. So I've got 4 kids. My kids are school age. I know that the chaos that's going on in my life right now, it's like I've got, a strong schedule from a work standpoint. My kids are in sports, all of them are in school. Like, I know that this is chaos right now. And then, but this part of my life, there's other buckets that are going to be somewhat out of balance. And I don't want to throw everything totally off, but to me, it's those two pieces. Am I listening as an employee? And is the organization, coming in also with some sort of a mechanism to be able to hear from their employees? And then the two have some sort of a way to connect the dots.
So that's really interesting. It's in perfectly set up how I'm going to modify this third question a little bit, our third and final question. And you guys, I'm going to set it up in a way that you can kind of use it as a parting shot too, if you'd like. But I'm going to steal an HR term here with a start, stop, continue. So start, stop, and continue doing something. I'm empowering you to speak for your generation. Well, stereotypes be damned for a minute. I'm going to let you speak for your generation. And we're going to start with Macy, because I'm sitting here as I'm listening, I'm thinking, does Gen Z feel, to John's point, that they're being listened to or being told? And sometimes it's like the number one mistake made in audience prioritization and communication is you're talking to the audience about things that matter to you and not that matter to them. So that's really important. So you are now speaking for Gen Z, Macy. What is one thing Gen Z would like to see start, stop, and continue when it comes to this general look at how companies are approaching wellness?
Well, what makes this question so difficult is because it just depends on where you work and who you are, is what I'm going to say. For me, I saw my Gen X dad work as hard as anyone else, and not having that work-life balance and not being able to come home all the time, you know what I mean, from work and traveling for work. So I guess really seeing that makes me also have like that really good work ethic, but I'm also really focused on the work-life balance that we're trying to implement. So I would say something that I want to see start is that open communication and the transparency between employees and employers. That's something, John, you touched on, and I think that is so important. I think my generation finds that extremely important, no matter if it's let's have a 35-hour work week or hey, let's not. let's do this, let's do that. I think no matter what, despite the situation, that open transparency, the open communication is number one, and that needs to start and continue forever, I think.
Do you have a stop though?
I think what needs to stop is the expectation that there is a set work week, a set work time, a set workplace. I think what needs to stop is the lack of flexibility, whether it's remote work or not. I think that no matter what, I mean, I can't say no matter what company, because places like the government aren't going to say, yeah, let's be flexible. There's people trying to take our country down, but it's fine. No. So in our field, at least in communications and similar fields, I think that that is very important, to just have that flexibility and stop being so strict. I don't want to say strict, but stop being so complacent in what the workplace looks like right now.
So set in like a kind of a static approach to the work day, work week. Gotcha. It's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, Lisa, I'm coming to you. Star, I know you want to stop pizza parties.
I do not want to stop pizza parties. I just don't want to eat pizza, and I don't think it makes up for not paying me enough. Thanks. Sorry. So I cannot disagree at all with what you said, Macy. I agree. There needs to start and continue conversations between employers and employees. But what I will say, I actually want to go a little bit back to what you said, Jan, when you talked about the pendulum swinging. So I think what worries me most is that I think this idea of, working smarter with Gen Z, and certainly I love that my daughter prioritizes, she's 18, she prioritizes filling up her own cup as well as working. And she goes to school and she takes a college class, even though she's still in high school. But she sets aside every Saturday to volunteer at the animal shelter. She's done it for 2 years since we moved here. Perfect. She loves it, and I love that. On the other hand, I think that if we don't have some sort of middle ground, like you were talking about, Jan, I don't see how Gen Z can build better resilience for dealing with bad times, because no matter what, there's going to be a bad time. Somebody's going to get sick, something terrible sick. It's going to happen. Somebody in your life is going to die. It's going to be stressful. And if you don't have some resilience from, to be able to handle that, you're going to be lost. And that is what worries me, I think, about the younger generation. And I see it in some younger millennials too. So I think, that's what we need to, I guess, start to, is building resilience, but not in a way where like Jan was talking about, she's so completely stressed, she literally thought she was having a heart attack. That should never happen.
Yeah.
But we also can't have I need a mental health day, so I'm going to check out today. No, neither one of these is, how we can function for a company. So I would say that would be sort of my start, stop, continue. Did I get all those three? I don't know.
I think you checked them there. It might have been for you it might have been a CSS or something, but we got them all. Yeah, let's go to you. What's your start, stop, continue?
Yeah, so I lost my earbud, so hopefully you guys can still hear me.
Oh yes.
Okay.
We'll go. Yeah, go ahead, John.
So with the sandwich generation, I am apparently not a millennial, because I would have had the technical piece of this nailed. So as far as my generation, if I'm taking, the Gen X or the millennial side of it, for start, I would say, back to what I said about listening. I think it's those two things. It's being able to listen to, the other generations, and be able to listen to that with an open mind, to change things. And then please stop, with the work hour worship. I have seen so many employees that are poor performers that show up and log more hours than other employees, and as a result get favorable favorable attention from their managers, and it is absolutely ridiculous. So spend the time to figure out what you need, in these roles within an organization. And that is the focus, not how many hours somebody works, and then be more flexible around meeting people's needs. So if someone is in crisis in their family, take the step to make sure that you care for them, so that they can take care of what they need to take care of. That comes back around 100-fold. When you take care of someone and you see them as a human being and you're able to help them take care of what they need to take care of, they will be there for you, and they'll go to bat for you. So I think from a start standpoint, and I guess that's a little bit of the stop as well. I think from the continue standpoint, I tell my kids, if I do nothing else, I am going to impart a work ethic in you before you turn 18 and leave my home.
Yes.
So this idea of like, I'll give you a good example. I had some kids helping me mulch my yard, and this kid is running the wheelbarrow with his phone in his hand. And as a text message would come through, he would stop the wheelbarrow and look at the text message. And I'm like,
if that's not Gen
dude, I'm gonna
Z,
break your phone.
I don't even know what is.
I'm getting like this is you have to be able to focus. You have to be able to put the work in when it's time to put the work in. And I think, I've tried to teach my kids this, not just through the school, schoolwork, but also through sports. My kids are involved in sports and they want the thing now. So it's like, I want to be a starter right now. Why is my coach yelling at me? This, that, and the other. And it's like, well, you didn't execute that play. Did they tell you about the play? Well, yeah. And you didn't execute the play. What would you like them to do? Continue to leave you on the field? And it's like that mentality of you have to put the work in. So it may not matter how you put the work in. So like I'm in a sales position, and this type of a world, it doesn't really matter when I'm putting those hours in, but they really care that I'm putting the work in to get to the end result. So, having that work ethic, I think, is something that, at least with what I've seen in the workplace, with some of the people that have been willing to leave an organization. So I'll give you one more example real quick. Leadership is a major, major issue moving forward in organizations. So if we're talking about things from an organizational standpoint, and what I've seen is people leave organizations because it's faster to get an opportunity somewhere else than to put the work in to prove that you can lead in your current role. So leadership is earned, not given, and that mentality of like, well, they wouldn't give me this leadership role that I put in for, so then I'm going somewhere else. And you got to get out of that mentality. And then I'll give you one on the personal health side. Please do your preventative care. So Gen X, boomers, the top 3 of healthcare costs are all preventable. So when you look at the major cost drivers and you look at what's driving those costs, the preventative well checks are going to stop that stuff from happening. So mammograms, colonoscopies, getting regular blood work.
Oh man, Macy, you love hearing about this stuff. You got like 25 years before you have to worry about it.
Yeah,
regular blood work,
you got to do it.
having a primary care
She's
physician,
checked out.
getting to your primary care physician. Seriously, this is stuff I'm telling you. I advise businesses on, we're talking millions of dollars are being blown frivolously, and people are dying because they're not getting mammograms. They're not having their blood run. They're not seeing a primary care physician. They're not getting colonoscopies. And this stuff is for real. This is not just doctors, that are, flouting this stuff. I look at these reports on a regular basis. I'm advising businesses, on these practices and how to drive these costs down in the organizations. It is real. And so if there's something that, those generations can do, for yourself, get to your doctor.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It's not just a marketing campaign, for sure. So, Jan, lots to react to there. What's your start, stop, continue for us?
Okay, I know we're running long, so I'm going to be really succinct. And I think my start, my stop, and my continue can apply to individuals and to companies. So for my start, it's to give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to take care of yourself. If you're a company, give yourself permission to take care of your employees, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make your company healthier, healthy employees. Stop saying yes to everything. Stop. If you're an employee, stop saying yes to, I can do that. I'll do that. I'll work the weekend. I'll do all these things that are putting so much stress in our lives. And if you're a company, stop saying yes to every demand that you're being held ransom for, that, you're afraid someone's going to quit because you're not giving them everything they want. It's okay. It goes back to what John has been talking about in Macy about open communication and not, and listening to each other, and then being pragmatic about the resolution and the solutions you provide. And then continue to drive towards your objectives and advance your life. So for companies, if you're continuing to drive towards your objectives, you're going to find those resolutions that work for both the employee and the company. And if you're an individual, that's going to work for you as well, to drive towards objectives that are going to improve your life and make you more fulfilled professionally and personally. So those are mine, and
well said.
That's it.
That didn't sound like a boomer. Wow, that was.
Yeah, see?
And you know what,
Macy?
I have to have my parting shot. When you were talking about John the wheelbarrow on the phone, I was going to say, but Macy might say that's working smarter. You're doing two things at once.
She's going to invent the wheelbarrow that you can use with one hand.
Remote.
Yeah, hey, if something's going down on the phone, you
wheelbarrow.
gotta answer.
That's right.
Okay, I know we've gone long, but seriously, from a truer Gen X perspective, Mike, like, you haven't said a lot during this recording, so I want to hear from you. Like, I could see on your face that you had some
She's
thoughts.
taking over.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I just
listen. We were going to close. We were going to go to him regardless. So she's fine. And Mike has been sitting there.
That's right.
I'm sure collecting information and has something for us. So Mike, what do you got?
I love listening to it. It is overwhelming. One thought I had coming in here was, we can maybe get a sense of how, and this is like the random thought part of it, Ben, get a sense of how well work-life balance has become if we can evaluate how we look at Fridays and how we've looked at Fridays over the last 30, 40 years. We are recording this on a Friday afternoon. And I think, Macy, when you sent out one of the times, all right, it's Friday at 2, okay? I'm sorry that it's on a Friday.
It's my weekend.
And that's where, you think, all right, what was Friday like at your office when you were 30 years old? Because Ben and I, we've seen this change. I remember when I got it, my career started, Friday was a work day, just as much as Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday. And
maybe it ended a little earlier, but it was a full work day.
And you've seen the evolution of it. Friday became, well, we won't let you work a little less, but we'll make it casual Friday. The evolution. Okay, we can wear jeans on Friday.
Woo,
You can take the tie off.
Jeans. And then, but the evolution, is, from ape to man is happening here. Then it's, all right, well, we're going to have summer hours, which was sometimes every other Friday, you can leave at noon.
Okay, that's a corporate thing. Let me just tell you, people, that's not a thing in the government. That is not a thing. You corporate
that's
people.
The asterisk.
whatever.
No.
I'd
Well,
never heard of
exactly.
that.
Well, we're in marketing, okay? It doesn't matter as much as, the bureaucracy of making sure the meat doesn't give us salmonella or, the red phone is ringing. But this is a long-winded way to say, that Friday, now it's balanced. Now, Macy, oh, this is my weekend. And,
I have no
and I'm glad
classes.
the younger generation has pretty much said on Friday, F working on Friday. Let's get some of our time back.
Yeah.
And as we get older,
I
the
guess we
time is
have to
less.
give our employees what they want. We better take off on Friday.
But it's that evolution has happened. You wouldn't have said 30 years ago, we're going to have balance days, but it's something that's happened through casual Fridays, summer Fridays, half Fridays, and until we get to the point where
I felt like I accomplished something because I put on my calendar from 2 to 5, I have it blocked for personal time. That to me feels like a huge evolution from 20 years ago, like that I actually just blocked it on my calendar. I don't always use it. I mean, I'm working sometimes, but I blocked it. So it's baby steps.
It is. It's By
I
the
think
time I'll retire, I'll have it figured out.
Yeah, well, and I think that's where this ultimately goes. There has been so much value, and like I said at the beginning, we might have intentionally, played up some of our generations a little, having fun with it. But the reality is, you probably, if you're watching this or listening to it, saw the thread that ran through, more often than not, hearing that I agree with that and I agree with that, because the reality is the principles of workplace communication and generational communication still come down to understanding and listening and communicating. Now that's peppered in with a lot of what John was talking about, which I couldn't agree with more, could not agree with more, when it comes to your own personal health. But I think that the reality of learning and taking something from every generation is what makes our workplaces great. It's what I was giving millennial presentations back in the early 2010s. I was giving Gen Z presentations in the late 2010s, as Lisa knows. And I have thoroughly enjoyed, I think it's kept our organization young, as Jan used to say, is new ideas and thoughts, and people coming into the organization with that. And the thing I would hate to see is organizations silence one generation because of stereotypes, because they think like, well, they want this and we're not doing it. That's not the case. You can make it work, and you can come up with programs that can work and just show that you care in a lot of different ways. That's really what that boils down to. So I am Gen X, but I kind of wear that as a badge of pride sometimes, because I'm the guy that's like, yeah, I'll stay up late and work all night, and then I'll quickly tell you how that ended up for me. It was not so good. Health wise, it doesn't end well, kids. If you're thinking you're going to do that, you need to have that personal time and balance time. So I can't thank you guys enough. We did go long. I kind of thought that might happen, but we also said we may slice and dice this a little bit to get some of the key points out. So Macy, we didn't listen to anything you told us as far as when we were on time and producing. So sorry.
It's okay. I have something to confess, guys, actually, before we stop. I've never gotten my blood taken, and I'm too scared to do it.
Macy!
That's it.
I'm so scared.
Now you've got a takeaway.
Now you got to take it. That's it.
Macy, be scared of what you might not find versus a little pinprick.
Yeah.
I'll go get my blood taken because of this podcast.
Yeah,
that would be good.
There we go.
All right.
Mission accomplished.
We accomplished something here today for sure.
I had to get it off my chest, you guys.
Hey, at least you don't have to prep for a colonoscopy yet. Okay.
Yeah. I got mine last
No
year.
doubt.
Yeah.
Right. I will be thankful for that.
It could be a lot worse.
Guys, I can't thank you enough. It was as fun, if more fun than I thought it was going to be, and I thought it was going to be a lot of fun. So, I hope you guys all had a good time contributing to this, and who knows, maybe we'll come back for a part 2 and do it all again.
All right.
I would love to.
This is great.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right.